Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to be presenting a case study ethics analysis for Business 4435, a course led by Jessa Nelson. Today's topic is on the NFL and long-term injury, essentially diving deep into the case of whether or not the NFL needs to be financially liable for injuries, specifically long-term injury benefits. So we're going to go ahead and start here. I've prepared a packet, which is just a Word document compiled with a couple screenshots of a PowerPoint presentation. The reason I haven't just directly included the PowerPoint presentation is because I've been trying to submit it a few times, and it just works best to have my slides on here. So as I go through everything, I will reference a slide. So go ahead and grab that packet if you guys haven't already and take a look at it. So we're going to my first content slide. So obviously we have the cover slide here that has a picture of Odell Beckham Jr. after he tore his ACL for the second time in Super Bowl 56, where the Los Angeles Rams defeated the Cincinnati Bengals. So we're going to go ahead to this second slide here. That is the prompt. So this is taken directly from the syllabus for this class. It is one of the 6 prompts that I'm asked to cover in today's case study, and I chose this one. Typically, injuries to employees occurring on the job are covered under workers' compensation. Workers' compensation coverage is generally limited to the duration of employment. In the case of NFL players and other workers who may experience debilitating effects of their workplace contributions long term, and long after their separation from the organization, there is questions on whether or not the former employee is liable for these injuries. Here's our issue. Should the NFL be responsible to pay for retired players' healthcare costs? What ethical considerations apply to all employers? Let's go ahead to this third slide where we talk down here. First, I'd like to present an argument for why maybe the NFL and other employers are responsible for long-term injury benefits. I've listed several points here, and I'd like to go kind of in depth on these points as we talk here. The first one is the NFL is one of the most violent and physically taxing professional sports leagues in all of the world. For those of you that aren't familiar with the NFL, American football is essentially 11 of the biggest, strongest, most athletic men on the planet fighting each other for the duration of an hour. So it's essentially one of the most brutal, one of the most physically taxing games to ever be invented. So it's very dangerous. It comes with an element of danger. The NFL brought in $18 billion in the 2022 season, making it one of the most popular American TV and streaming programs. The NFL is also an entertainment industry that relies on each of its players to be profitable and to be fun to watch. One of the greatest draws of the NFL is how fun it is to watch the best players in the world do their job. The NFL also continues to put players in harm's way for the sake of revenue and retained viewership. Essentially, every time those 11 players step on the field, they are at risk, either of a short-term, a smaller injury, or a life-threatening injury. There are many cases for that here. The NFL is ultimately responsible for player safety and thus takes on the financial responsibility of paying long-term injury compensation if a player is hurt and his life is impacted long-term. So that's kind of a basic overview, and you can check the slides for why maybe someone would say the NFL is liable, and that's just a couple reasons. Now, here's an argument against it, and maybe why once an NFL player's career is over, short-term or long-term injury costs are not to be paid by the NFL anymore. Specifically, NFL players play under assumed risk of personal injury, essentially saying that, yes, although football is every NFL player's childhood dream realized, it does come at a cost and it does come at a risk that they might end up hurting themselves. My second bullet point on this slide states that NFL players have a part of their salary set aside as guaranteed money that the player makes no matter what, and this could help cover any injuries. The average NFL salary, so the baseline NFL salary that everyone has to be paid, is $750,000 a year. Now, that is before tax, but there is a portion of that that is guaranteed, and that money that I just said is guaranteed money. There's a whole lot of other ways that you can make money. It's catches, it's tackles, it's how many games you play, it's how many games you start, it's do you win the Super Bowl. There are so many ways that players can make money and hold on to money that can take care of any medical expenses after the league. My third point, the NFL takes player health seriously already, so players who do get hurt are by random chance, and the NFL shouldn't be responsible for it. Essentially, assuming the risk of personal injury means the NFL is not responsible for it. Lastly, on this slide, the NFL makes improvements not only to the game of football to make it less physically dangerous, but it also helps increase the durability and reliability of the equipment used in games. I don't think it would be a question to sit here and say, oh, the NFL is dangerous and oh, the NFL doesn't care about its people. And of course, there needs to be long-term injury loss if there wasn't a very clear cut set of evidence that the NFL really is trying to make the game safer. Just this year, they banned a tackle known as a hip drop tackle, where essentially a player who is running with the ball can no longer be tackled by a defender who grabs their waist and then falls on either their legs or their ankles. A lot of players end up breaking legs, breaking ankles, tearing ligaments. It's a terrible way to get tackled, and it's very dangerous. And so the NFL this year said, all right, no more. We're not going to allow this in games anymore. So these are just a few arguments for and a few arguments against maybe why the NFL should or shouldn't be why the NFL shouldn't be held responsible for long-term injury coverage. Here are a couple of my thoughts, and I have a unique perspective on this as someone who has played the game of football. The game of football is a risky game. I played at the college level. I played for Northwestern, and I've been hurt before. And yes, I am responsible for wanting to play the game of football. That's my choice. However, I think that each individual injury needs to be evaluated case by case. There are some injuries that will affect a player for the rest of their life. Let's take a former Kansas City Chiefs and Washington Commanders quarterback, Alex Smith. He had 11 operations done on his leg after he was tackled by J.J. Watt in the 2019 NFL season. His leg was sticking out in 3 different directions. So in a case like that, the NFL will look at it and say, this person's quality of life is forever impacted. Now, there might be some guys who get concussions, and maybe they have a little bit of brain fog going from that. But is that on the same level? And does the same amount of compensation need to be paid towards that? Maybe that's a different story. The NFL also, like I said earlier, does profit off of every player, and thus each player needs to be taken care of and treated like they are making money for the NFL. I believe it is ethical for the NFL to use their players to make money. However, proper care and knowledge of each player who makes more money for the league than the league could ever spend on their health care takes priority. And if an injury is found to be a long-term problem, the NFL needs to offer assistance to the players impacted by injuries. Now, you look at an NFL salary and you think there's no way that these guys shouldn't be able to handle paying medical bills. True. They're making millions of dollars a year, most of them, and they're in the high $100,000 a year. So the $700s, $800s, and $900,000 a year, even for low draft picks and people who don't play much. But really what I think is that no matter what job you work, no matter what salary you have, there is some liability on the employer. Now, as we go to my last slide, the thank you slide, where I kind of give my thoughts and provide kind of conclusion on what I think here, I think that yes, the NFL needs to provide coverage for long-term injuries, but it needs to be case by case to determine how much and how severe the injuries are. As mentioned before, there's a huge element of accepting personal risk that comes with playing football. But just like any job, there's a risk. You could fall and break your head open on the floor stacking up a grocery cart. You could fall off a skyscraper and break your back in construction. You could even cut part of your finger off being a chef. There's always some kind of injury, there's some kind of risk. And I think that just like any job, there is financial responsibility and there's responsibility of the company to take care of its players, to take care of everyone involved in that. So as I kind of wrap up and conclude here, I do believe, yes, the NFL does need to provide long-term injury And I believe that there is some personal risk involved there. However, I think that each element of each case needs to be brought up, dissected, and thought through. Thank you.